Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Andy Serwer. I'm a member of the class of 1981 and a trustee here. And before I introduce our incredible guest, Ryan Speedo Green, I have a few big picture things to tell you about today. We're just really honored to have the honorary degree recipients here at the college. I hope you just heard from Maria Hinojosa across the way, and later on at the baccalaureate at Watson Arena, we'll hear from Dave Rue as well. So it's a great group, and most especially Speedo Green, who has come to the college before and has a remarkable story. I'm just going to give a very brief introduction because, you know, sometimes those long introductions, you know, we just want to hear from this person instead of, you can go to Wikipedia and look it up. But anyway, Ryan is a Speedo.
Yeah?
Sorry. Is a 3-time Grammy award-winning bass baritone opera singer and a star of the Metropolitan Opera in New York City and the Vienna State Opera in Austria, of course. And the New York Times has called him a real showstopper. So please join me in welcoming Ryan Speedo Green. And again, as I said, back to the college because you won the Freelander Award here for Common Good not long ago, which is amazing. We're just glad that you have maintained this connection to Bowdoin, Speedo, which is really amazing. And we're going to hear about his origin story for those of you who are not familiar with it, which is just truly, truly remarkable. And I just want to make the point that if you want to know more about Speedo, there is this really incredible book.
New York Times best-selling book, as a matter of fact.
He didn't write it.
This is true. Horrible writer.
But it's just incredible. And it's called Sing for Your Life, A Story of Race, Music, and Family. So I've been delving into it. It's just incredible. So first of all, you corrected me backstage, Speedo, and told me not to call you Ryan. That's what your mom calls you when you're in trouble.
Yeah.
So, and it's not a nickname.
It's not a nickname.
It's your middle name, Speedo. So where did the name Speedo come from?
Yeah, I mean, I was born with it, so you know, that's a plus. You know, I think for me, I really didn't think about my middle name until I got older. And when it was first used, it was sort of as a joke. And actually the name was given to me because I was born on April Fool's Day. And my father, I'm one of 5 boys of my father. And I was the number 4 out of 5. And my mom wanted a girl. Unfortunately, I was not a girl. So my father got the honor of naming me. And he decided to name me after his favorite underwear, because my father was an amateur bodybuilder. So he named me Ryan Speedo Green, and my mom always hated this name, and she never called me Speedo, ever. But as I grew older, I remember I started liking it just because, you know, it's kind of separated me from the pack, you know, and I had my own nickname. No one had to make a nickname for me, because if you had heard the nicknames that I got as a child, they weren't so great. Well, like, there's one that I remember called Crying Ryan, so, because I was always crying all the time. But I'll never forget, I did an audition in New York City for a very famous conductor, and he was reading out the names of all the people, and he's like, Ryan Speedo Green. Speedo. I like that name, Speedo. And he's like, I'm gonna call you Speedo. And I was like, if this conductor, who is like one of the most famous conductors in the world, likes my name Speedo, not a single person in the world can tell me it's a bad name. And in this profession, as you know, like artists from Prince to Madonna to whomever, names are everything. And it may sound funny at first, like Speedo, but the moment you maybe YouTube me or go to one of my shows at the Met or in Boston or wherever Santa Fe, wherever you see me, and you hear me perform, you'll no longer think of my name as being silly or funny. You'll think of my name being me. And that's my performance as a performer, and my presence is that name. And I love that idea of breaking the preconceptions of what a name can be.
Right. Interesting, right? That's your identity now.
Yeah.
So you're
as a performer.
As a performer. And so I think you just turned 38 years old.
Yeah, I did, yeah. April 1st.
Happy birthday, right?
Thank you,
April
thank you,
1st,
thank you,
right?
yay.
And which, by the way, I think is sort of like the sweet spot for opera singers. You're just kind of coming into it. It's not 22, it's not 85, it's right around now.
Yeah, I mean, being an opera singer is playing the long game. And you know, as I think I always relate opera singing to sports, but the reason what makes it different than sports is sports you have a very short amount of time to be the best you can be. And Father Time is undefeated in sports. No matter, apparently if you're Tom Brady or LeBron James, different story, but it's usually undefeated. And as an opera singer, it's the exact opposite. Like, youth is the problem for being a classical musician. It's very rare that the most famous classical musicians are Wunderkinds or child performers. It's extremely rare. It's more common for a classical pianist, a classical celloist, or from Yo-Yo Ma to Yu Jia Wang to Ryan Speedo Green, you name it. We're usually not in our prime until we're adults. And for me, as a bass baritone, I'm in the lowest, one of the lowest registers in the male voice, which if you think about it, as a male, you're not truly into your true voice until your mid to late 30s. Think about it, when you were 20-something years old, you didn't feel that it was your true voice until you were in your 30s. And so for me, as a bass baritone, a bass, I'm finally in the sweet spot. And now career-wise, I'm way ahead of where I should be, because most people don't start having big careers as low voices until their 40s and 50s. Yeah. And so I have a lot of time now to like do what I want to do and sing the things that I want to sing and perform the places I want to perform, because I'm already there.
Right, and your career is just keeps really taking off even more so.
I'm extremely blessed.
Get into that a little bit. I mean, it's just the past couple of years have been amazing. Do we have any opera buffs in the house?
Yes. Woo! Applause to y'all. We love
it lives. Come on. There's some great new stuff out there besides the classics. Talk about that a little bit as well. We have to start really, or just get into the early part of your life, Speedo, which was so fraught. I mean, you grew up in low-income housing, in trailer parks. There was violence around you. There was violence in your family. You were violent. You were taken to a juvenile facility. You were put in solitary confinement, I should say. And the question is, how did you get out of that?
This is a question that I've had a lot of time to marinate on, and I honestly, until the book came out, the Sing for Your Life book, which shameless promotion, all of you should read. I never thought about it, and honestly, like it was looking back, it was the most adult decision a 12-year-old could ever make. Most 12-year-olds don't say, most adults don't say the worst time of their life was when they were 12 years old. Not many people say that. Like, your child is supposed to be their carefree time, a time when you're, making a lot of mistakes and not paying for them. And for me, that was not the case. And it was sort of a culmination of a lot of problems at home that ended up me projecting into the outside world. And eventually it got so bad I had to project it at home. It was sort of a cry for help. And when I was locked up in solitary confinement, looking out my little cell window, thinking like, the world was better without me, I knew that I didn't want to end up there again. And I remember one of the darkest moments there was when I got a phone call from arguably the most important people of my life, who wasn't my mother, was my father. It was strangers who had no reason to become as important as they were to me, but they were. And as a 12-year-old child, they found out that I was locked up there, and they called me. And my heart sank because I realized that the two people who I never wanted to know this mistake knew it. And that's when probably my first moment of feeling fear of not wanting to disappoint them again. And even though they weren't disappointed when they called me, they were encouraging and letting me know that I could do better and I could be better, and that this wasn't like the end of my life. To me, I was disappointed. And that was the first time I really, really took a look at myself, and I had a lot of time to look at myself locked up. And not many 12-year-olds will have that kind of reflective moment. And so when I got out, I sort of went back to the sort of root teachings of my childhood that they actually helped me learn, these two educators. And I made a lot of decisions when I got home to put myself in a position to not fail. Because what I was doing before then was putting myself in positions to fail, being around the wrong people, letting the people at home dictate my emotions and my direction. And so I looked towards education as a way to escape, which led me to music, which led me to opera, which led me to sitting here today.
There's a lot to go in there about, and just for instance, I mean, were you always interested in singing? Were you singing as a little kid? That's just something I mean, you have this great voice. I can, you know, you can just hear when you talk, but I mean, is that always a thing?
I don't know. I mean, if you ask me, I say no. But I've heard various stories from people who knew me back then as a child that I love to sing. But I remember even as a child, I was always interested in music. Like, and I did projects in elementary school where I had to choose a musician. And I remember that I fell in love with Elvis Presley and Jimi Hendrix, and even I remember even like Johnny Cash and things like this, because I learned about them at a young age from the teacher who was teaching me, and just projects that I did. And I remember I had a songbook from the Beatles. That, again, how many people who were born in the 80s and grew up in the hood have Beatles songbooks? But I did, because of my teacher. And I'll never forget that. Like, even when I was locked up and I had no access to the outside world, but there was some kind people at the juvenile detention facility who let me have a radio when I was locked up in my room, because I was locked up a lot because I was pretty bad. And I had this radio, and they would play the top 40 or top 25, top 40 hits. And I would sit in my room for hours because there's no TV. And imagine no outside, no TV, locked up in a cell, 12 years old. All I could do was listen to was on that radio. And so I would sit there listening to, you know, the top 40 hits. And if you ask me today what the top 20, top 25 hits are of that time, I can tell you. Even to this day, I can probably sing most of those songs. From Backstreet Boys to Britney Spears to Boys to Men. They were all the top 20 at the time. Even I remember groups like there was a song by Carlos Santana and Green something.
Matchbox 20.
That was like hugest hit that summer. And I never once in my life, even today, I would never listen to that kind of music, but it was on the radio all the time. And so I was like, ain't good enough. I would change my world to lift you up. And I would just sing this. I would sing the song in my cell, you know, and I realized then that music was an escape. And for a lot of people, you don't realize, no matter what religion you are, no matter what financial bracket you come from, no matter where you come from, the thing that unites us all is music. Seriously. And I think about people like Michael Jackson, who transcended communism. And like, you know, he was more famous in Soviet Union than he was in America, because his music touched people. And the Beatles, these kind of things, and it's an amazing feeling as a musician that when people, you know, who are not opera lovers come to see me perform, that I can be good enough as a performer to have them feel those kind of emotions and that kind of connection to the art.
All right, so you were kind of into music, you know, a lot, and then, you know, but I just want to get back to this and just make this point, reiterate this point about that fortitude, the inner fortitude you had, like, okay, I'm never going to do this again. But how many people say that? I'm never going to do this again, and then they do it again. So I don't know. You're a very singular human being, too.
It's rare. It's rare.
I mean, it is rare.
It is very rare.
I mean, and you have this, and you do have this ability to sing. So I want to go back to your high school visit when you went to the Met, and you saw a performance. I don't know how you got to the Met. This is the Hampton Roads area of Virginia where you came from. And so you go to the Met, and you see this performance, and you turn to your teacher and said, I'm going to be an opera singer. Now, you didn't say, well, I want to go singing, like, you know, with Carlos Santana, which, so what was this like? You want to be an opera singer?
I mean, again, I think about my past and like the kind of things I said as a child, like that, you know, like I had this imagination as a child where I would make up stuff like, oh, I went to Africa as a child. I told my teacher I went to Africa as a child, which I had never left my trailer park, but I had an imagination of being something, doing something more than what life told me I could be. And even when you talked about making a decision to not, you know, two of my brothers ended up being going to prison and being convicts for things that nothing to do with me. One was gangs and one was assault. And I was they're older than me. I was supposed to be on the same trajectory. Like I literally was on the same path. And if you guys know anything about the American system and from juvenile detention to after that, the percentage is almost disgusting of like the amount of children who go into juvenile detention, who are supposed to be rehabilitated, go right into jail. And it's something that my generation and the generations after me, hopefully coming from this college, can help fix. And when I think about that day going to the opera, I saw an opera called Carmen, which I happened to just be performing Escamillo in at the Met, which is one of the biggest roles in the show. And Carmen is one of the best operas you can possibly, if you're not an opera lover, go see this opera, it'll make you an opera lover. There's so many tunes in it that are basically your childhood. I came to this opera thinking opera was not for me. I thought opera, again, was this big fat white Viking lady breaking windows, you know, with the horns and the and all kind of stuff. And everything you could think of, Looney Tunes, the pizza commercial, you know, like everything, mafioso, you know, I thought it was so cheesy. And when I sat in the Metropolitan Opera, which is literally the Disney world of opera, you go in there, you cannot help but feel amazed with those chandeliers, with the velvet carpet, the Tiffany's glass, the Tiffany chandeliers. It is, you feel like you're in a modern day gladiatorial castle. And I'm sitting there as a 14, 15-year-old boy thinking I do not belong here. This is the epitome of like elitism, and I don't belong here. And I sat down with I was a part of a school for the arts called Government School for the Arts, which is kind of like the School of Fame, but in Norfolk, Virginia. And I sat there, and the person who walked out on stage to perform the lead role, the title role of Carmen, was a mezzo-soprano by the name of Denise Graves. And she's an African-American mezzo-soprano. And for me, representation was key. And it was a beautiful opera, beautiful music, but what made it tangible, what made it real, what made it something that I could remember forever, that changed the trajectory of my life, was the fact that the person performing it looked like me. And it shattered, as I mentioned before with myself, my preconception of what an opera singer could be. And that has been the sort of theme of my life, is shattering preconceptions. And from that moment forward, I left my imagination with bananas, and I got to meet her after the show because of the Government School's connection to opera and how great that school was ran. I got to meet her, and I left the opera thinking, I can do this. And so I went to my chorus teacher, who ended up being my voice teacher, and I said to him, his name was Robert Brown. I said, Mr. Brown, I want to sing at the Met. And not that I want to sing opera, because it wasn't about the opera, it was about the show and the performance in that moment. And I had my first big dream. And that educator, Robert Brown, instead of doing what most people would do in that moment, most musicians, most classical musicians in that moment would be like, you should aim a little lower. Especially because I couldn't read music. I had never sang a role, like I had never sung in a foreign language. I pretty much was the exact opposite of what a classical musician should be, or should be preparing to be. And instead of shattering my dreams, he told me, it's possible, but you have to do this, and then the list went on like it was a patter aria from Hamilton. You know, it just lasted forever. And, but what he didn't do was say no, or you can't do this. And I spent my entire life, other than like 2 years in elementary school, every person in my life told me I couldn't do something. I couldn't do it. I wasn't supposed to graduate high school. I wasn't supposed to go to college. I wasn't supposed to be a musician. I had no talent. I was a hoodlum, a person in the system, a juvenile. And in that moment, that teacher gave me a path. And that path that they gave me, every single step of that path, from the very bottom to the end result, I accomplished. And 9 years later, I was singing at the Met.
Yeah, it's really remarkable. It's really amazing. And it is a combination of this fortitude, and also there was some people in your life. You know, there was some common good, if we can use that phrase, coming at you from people, right? Yeah, so the Friedlander Award for the Common Good, which again, when the moment happened to me, was the greatest honor that had ever happened to me. To someone to think of me, that I had presented a form of giving back to the community. And not many young people
again, I'm 38, but I'm a bit of an old soul. Not many people at the age of 25, 26 reflect on their life. Think about it, like your children, whoever has graduates this weekend, I'm 99% positive your children aren't thinking about like when they were 12 and like how did I get to this point? Like they're thinking about their future, like, oh my gosh, I can't wait to go into the world. I can't wait to get this job or pursue my next degree or, you know, maybe start paying off my student debt, whatever it is. But you know, at 26, I had, because of the book, because of this thing that was happening in my life, I had to start thinking about my past. And because of this, I started thinking about how blessed I was from the moment that I stepped into a classroom, a specific classroom. And in third grade, I'm taking you back, in third grade, I was basically kicked out of elementary school because I was so bad that I was incapable of being in a classroom of third graders. Like I was so bad that teachers could not handle me in third grade. Verbally, physically, you can imagine. And so I was put into a specially, a new form of classroom, a new class, a small boutique class of the worst kids in all the schools in the surrounding district. So it was like every school got to choose like a kid, like who's your worst kid? Give them to us. And I was chosen as a special child from my school that would be allowed this opportunity to go to this class. And so like kind of a last resort. And I walked into this classroom, fourth grade, and saw this 5'0", curly blonde-haired lady. And the first thing I did to show my welcome to her and my welcome to this class was I threw my chair at her. Sorry, I threw my desk at her, even worse. And I told her that I would not be taught by a white woman. And instead of sending me to the principal, which any teacher in their right mind should do, and would be absolutely in their, you know, their right to do, she just took away my chair and said, when I'm ready to behave, I could have both my desk and my chair back. And what that did to me in that moment was shock me, because I was expecting to go home. You know, I was expecting for my mom to come get me and deal with that punishment. But instead, I'm sitting here still in class. This teacher, what she did was not give up on me. And that was like, without telling me, without saying anything, I knew this as a child. This teacher was not going to give up on me. And the next thing she did after I started behaving a little bit was, we had multiple kids in our classroom. We had African-American, white, I'm not sure if we had any Hispanic, but it was black, white kids in our class. She made every child, after the Pledge of Allegiance, which we had to do back then, she made all of us recite the Martin Luther King I Have a Dream speech. Mm-hmm. And we had to learn and memorize this and say this every day of school for 2 years when I was in her class. Never again did I hear Martin Luther King's name come up, unfortunately, after that. But in 4th and 5th grade, I had to learn who Martin Luther King was and what he meant to her classroom, what he meant to education, what he meant to America, and what he meant to me in her class, and specifically his idea that you will not be judged by the color of your skin, but by the content of your character. And what she meant to teach us as 4th and 5th graders was that in her class, no matter what we did before we came to her, we were clean slate. We had a clean slate. We were not the product of our environment. We were the product of being a child. And that, oh God, I'll be thinking about it. It makes me like, I wish every child could have that. Every child should be able to know that they are special and that they're not, that they're important. And those 2 years of my life in her class were the greatest years I had as a student. And when I tell you, when I got out of juvenile detention, the things that helped me come back to the general population, the things that helped be my foundation to be a teenager who was worthy of teachers wanting to teach, was what I was taught in 4th and 5th grade. And I think, you know, as then in 4th and 5th grade, I didn't know how to, I didn't know how to regurgitate what she was teaching me, but it stuck with me into literally my being. And when I got old enough to understand how to use it, the reason why I know how to give the common good, I'm the epitome of the common good, because the common good was given to me as a child. And the values were instilled in me as a child. And those two people, her and her husband, are here today. Her name is Elizabeth Hughes, and she's right here in the front row.
That's just an incredible, incredible story, and welcome, and thank you. And thank you, because all these people who help you out, Speedo, we benefit from them because we get to enjoy your artistry.
Yes.
And I mean, that's what's really amazing. I want to skip ahead and ask you about some opera stuff. For instance, there's this high drama moment in your life when you auditioned at the Met for this national competition. I mean, it was sort of American Idol meets The Voice for opera,
yeah.
right? Exactly. And you know, you walked in, you're like, me? What am I doing here? And of course, you nailed it. But and you sang what? Banquo's?
It's a Banquo's aria from
Banquo's
Macbeth.
aria.
Yeah. Right before he gets, yeah, he gets assassinated by his so-called friend.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right. What was that like?
So this was literally the moment when I told you 9 years later, I sang at the Met. It happened to be in the biggest competition in America for opera. It's the Metropolitan Opera National Council Lafont competition. And it's every state in America, including Puerto Rico, and Mexico now is added on. They get representatives, basically anywhere from 2,000 to 4,000 or 5,000 singers from all over the United States and Mexico audition to where it goes from district to region to semifinals. And then at the semifinals, it's about 22 to 28 singers, and then from there, you go to the finals where they eliminate another huge group to where it's about 10 to 8 singers, and then from there, you get to sing with the Met Orchestra on the Met stage, and it's recorded. You're by yourself, which most singers who sung at the Met don't get to sing by themselves on the Met stage, which is even more bananas. And I'm sitting here at 24 years old, 9 years after I saw my first opera, singing one of the most iconic Verdi arias, Come dal cielo precipita, from Verdi's Macbeth. I'm not supposed to say it. I'm supposed to say the Scottish opera when I'm on stage. I apologize for all the theater people out there. Don't follow me. Anyway, yeah, and I step out there, and I think to myself, first of all, I was only doing a competition for feedback. I didn't think I would even get past the first district. But I was going against singers who went from Curtis, AVA, Juilliard, Manhattan School of Music, CCM, San Francisco Conservatory, like the greatest conservatories in the United States, and I'm coming from Florida State.
FSU.
You know, FSU, let's go. But I was still in school. I hadn't even graduated yet. And I'm walking on stage to sing in a packed house, over 4,000 people in the Metropolitan Opera, waiting to hear 24-year-old me sing this iconic aria. And of course, Mr. and Mrs. Hughes, they were there, you know, and my high school, I forgot to also mention, I think it's very important for you to mention, that the school that taught me opera, that trip that I went on to see my first opera, which again, I had Mrs. Hughes was my teacher in 4th and 5th grade. Her husband, at that time when I was in elementary school, got a new job. And he was a vice principal and principal in Yorktown area, Williamsburg area, Yorktown, Williamsburg area, and he had gotten a job to be the executive director of an art school in Norfolk, Virginia. And if you guys know anything about the geography of Virginia, that's about an hour and some change away. And this happened to me around when I was in 3rd or 4th grade, 4th and 5th grade. And I was told this, but I was like, whatever. Mm-hmm. And after I got out of juvie and I started to get into music, and my mom moved me about an hour away from where I was taught by Miss Hughes. And I happened to get into a chorus program to try and get away from being at home. And I did this, they made it mandatory in my chorus program to audition for this school called Government School for the Arts in Norfolk, Virginia. And me not thinking again, I'm about 13 years old, 14 years old. I'm not thinking about what job, like my fourth grade elementary school teacher's husband has. I'm not thinking about that. I'm just thinking about, oh, they want me to audition. So I go to this audition. I am the least prepared for this audition, let's put it that way. I'm singing the Star Spangled Banner, a cappella, and I'm also singing a little song called Caro Mio Ben, which any of you guys who know Beyonce, she sang this piece, and I sing it much worse, a cappella. And after my audition, which was arguably one of the worst auditions I've ever done, it is the worst audition I've ever done, and if anybody has a recording of it, I will find them and hurt them. I walk outside of this audition, and Mr. Hughes, Mrs. Hughes' husband, is waiting outside my audition room. And I'm like, what the heck are you doing here? And he's like, I'm the executive director of the Government School for the Arts. And I just saw your name on the audition, so I came to hear your audition. And luckily, he was not in the room, so I did not pass out or have a heart attack at 14 years old. But I thought to myself, I went home and I was like, okay, well, luckily, I'm not gonna get in, so it won't be a problem of me embarrassing myself anymore. Right. 3 weeks later, I get a phone call from Mrs. Hughes, and she tells me that I got into the Government School for the Arts to pursue opera. And my first thought was like, what's opera? Because I had no idea like that I was getting, I had no idea I was gonna get in. And and when I got the next couple months later, we got offered to go to this trip to New York to see an opera at the Met, and my mom did not have the money for me to go. It was a paid trip to New York to see musicals and operas, and my mom, I was the only kid who wasn't gonna be able to go because my mom refused to pay the money for it. She didn't have the money for it, you know, it happens. And anonymous donor donated the money for me to go see my first opera, Carmen at the Met. And I didn't know who it was. I never asked because I was 14 and selfish. I never asked. I just was like, cool, I get to go to New York City. I've never been. And I went that changed my entire life, that trip. Yeah. Not knowing that it would change my entire life. And the people, I found out, actually, the irony is I found out when I was like 25 years old, when the book was starting to be written, because Daniel Bergner, a great writer, started asking questions like, what anonymous donor paid for this trip? Come to find out, it was Mr. and Mrs. Hughes, who paid for me to go to see my first opera. So again, another applause, please.
You guys.
When I tell you, it is the biggest blessing for all of you here. If I could teach nothing about my career, is by chance. It takes a village to raise a child. That could just be your home. It could be your community. But for me, it was strangers. It was teachers. It was educators. It was the love, the compassion, the positive reinforcement you give children, regardless of whether they come from you, your home, or your community. You'll never know what that'll do for them and how that'll change their life. And every moment that you give to yourself that isn't for yourself or for someone who you're supposed to give, like your children, you will affect a child's life. And if you have the room in your heart and the room in your wallet, donate your time or donate your funds to help a child discover something that they'll never discover themselves. Because you could create a Ryan Speedo Green. It's possible. Because if I can do it, imagine what you could do.
That's amazing, Speedo. It's very moving, it's true, and but you know, what you've accomplished is remarkable too. And I hate to bring it to another place.
Yeah,
but
of course. I love it.
I have to ask you about opera a little bit, and you know, and I have to ask you this question, which is, what's your favorite opera? Or is that like asking what's your favorite child question? Or what are your favorites, plural?
I thought my favorite opera was Carmen, because it was the opera that made me love opera, but it is definitely not my favorite opera now. The moment I started learning about opera, it was like almost like a downhill avalanche of just interest. Like every opera I listened to became my favorite. And then all of a sudden, for a long time, Don Giovanni was my favorite opera. And then all of a sudden it was La Boheme, and then it was Aida, and you know, and I liked operas for then other reasons. Like I liked singers who sing in those operas, so I loved that specific opera because that singer singed in that opera. Just like, you know, you may like a certain pop song, maybe not the original person who sang it, but then you love the newest version of that singer singing that song. And for me now, I was happy when I said I wanted to sing on the stage of the Met. I meant any capacity. If I was the gingerbread boy in Hansel and Gretel for the rest of my life, I would have been happy doing that because I was singing on the stage of the Met. And I made my debut as the Mandarin in Turandot as my first official role, which is a Puccini opera. And I thought to myself, this is my favorite opera, this is my favorite moment. Like, and I was like, this is the greatest moment of my career. I sing about 1.5 minutes in like a 3-hour opera, and this is my greatest moment. And now I just left the Metropolitan Opera singing a role where I was on stage for 90% of it, where I sing a role that was about 2 hours and 10 minutes long with the Met Orchestra called Fire Shut Up in My Bones. I sing the lead in it. The year before, I got a Grammy playing a boxer, the first ever sports opera at the Met.
Right.
I literally worked with a heavyweight champion of the world, a former heavyweight champion of the world, Michael Bent, losing over 100 pounds to get on stage and punch somebody while singing high Fs. And I won a Grammy for it. So, I guess it worked out.
With that. That's fantastic.
So Champion's my favorite opera. Now in the future, I'm looking towards bigger stuff. I love Wagner. So I sang my first Wotan in Das Rheingold. I'm singing Don Giovanni this summer in Santa Fe. And I'm really excited for delving into these lead roles that will be my future, because now apparently I'm singing lead roles now. So
that's
an amazing feeling.
These leads, it's amazing. I know you were in Lohengrin, which is my favorite.
Yes, I sang König Heinrich.
Wagner, yeah.
Heinrich, yeah.
Yes.
The choruses in that are rock star moments.
Yeah, love it. What's it like at the Met? I saw that Renee Fleming wrote a blurb on your book. Like, what's it like backstage? Is Renee Fleming just like hanging out, or do you talk to her? Can you say hi to her for me?
So she's a superstar and obviously a Kennedy Center winner. If you guys know about the Kennedy Center honors, and she is literally the queen of opera as an American, and she's done so much for our art form. And she's one of my mentors. When she gets involved with a lot of young singers, and I'll never forget. I won the Met, and I saw her perform at the Met later on, but I never met her in person. And then I happened to just be walking to a pie shop because I like pie, and I was in Hell's Kitchen, going to find just a little bit of Taste of the South and a pecan pie, and I'm walking to this place called Little Pie Shop in Hell's Kitchen, and all of a sudden I see Renee Fleming in the distance, and I'm with my wife. She was my girlfriend at the time, and I'm freaking out. And my wife's like, doesn't know who Renee Fleming is, because she's not an opera singer. I made sure the only diva in my relationship was me. So I didn't marry a singer. And so I'm freaking out. My wife's like, calm down. She's just a girl. She's just a woman. Calm down. Because that's what Renee Fleming like. She's in this 2002 production of Don Giovanni, which I have on DVD in my home. And she's like, calm down. She's like, let's go talk to her. So I'm like, okay, I can do this. So I like walk over to her, and I'm like, excuse me. My voice got real high. I lost all the bass in my voice. It's like, Miss Fleming, I'm Ryan. And she's like, yes, you're Ryan Speedo Green. And I was like, huh? I'm the kind of person, I have no filters. Like, you know my name? And she was like, of course I know you. She's like, I've heard so many great things about you, and I know you won the Met in 2011, and I'm really excited for your career. You're doing all the right things. And I left. I mean, let me tell you, that piece of pie that I ate, because she said, this is a great pie shop, by the way. That piece of pie that I ate was probably one of the best pieces of pies that I ate in a long time, emotionally.
That's awesome. That is fantastic. I'm glad we're on the same page with Renee Fleming. So just a couple of quick questions before we go. So what about the future of opera? I mean, you're talking about these Terence Blanchard pieces, which is, I mean, he's
Champion
amazing.
My bones, yeah.
Right. Both those are amazing. I mean, he's amazing. And, Philip Glass,
Akhenaten,
which is amazing, too. Sorry to keep using that word. But, these are new things that are very dynamic.
Yeah.
That, people are going to at the Met, right?
Yeah.
There's a future.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, to know about opera is over 400 years old. Before there was musical theater, before there was movies and all this kind of jazz, there was opera. Opera was obviously, it was meant for the kings and queens when it first came out. But then it became for the common man and the common woman. It became for the common person. And when opera came out, for instance, Mozart, the opera Don Giovanni, when it came out, it was controversial. Like the kings and queens that existed tried to get it erased, tried to get rid of it, because it talked about how people abused power. Like, people who had titles, the kings and queens and dukes, and were abusing their power. Like, doing bad things to women, killing people, not getting away with it. And this was super controversial. This was happening, of course. This is a super exaggerated version of it, but it showed that people were being mistreated. And even the opera Le Nozze di Figaro, The Marriage of Figaro by Mozart as well, was talking about how the common man could outsmart, a person who was, the count, who's probably had his version of college, who was very well educated and brought up in all the richest and all the wealth, was outsmarted by a person who never went to school, a barber, a person who does hair, and literally a servant, outsmarted a count. And that was controversial. Opera's always been breaking the boundaries and also helping people who want to belong. Even the LGBTQ plus community, they were the most safe in opera and classical music. Some of the greatest composers of opera were closeted gay men. And even in church, this is such a beautiful thing about music, is it's always welcoming to everyone. Right. And it took a long time, of course, for people of color to be involved, but that was because of the people who were presenting opera, not because of opera itself. Right. And I think of singers like Leontine Price, Marian Anderson, George Shirley, the people came before me. Even someone like who's associated with Showboat, Paul Robeson, who in America was shunned. He was one of the greatest voices in America, and because he believed in equality, he was booted out of America, and he had a huge operatic career in Europe. And in America, never got to hear him and perform operatic roles in the time that he was actually big and famous, because in America, we were at the time racist as a country. And it sucks that we missed out on a voice like that, but luckily, we have achieved so much in our country. The best singers in the world, in my opinion, come out of this country. And that's in a country which doesn't give free education. So in Europe, where to learn music and be educated in music is free at a higher level, in America it's not. You have to get a scholarship. And the best singers in the world, the best voices in the world, the most unique voices in the world, both in opera, in science, in law, and medical field, come out of this country. And it's a true testament to what this country can be at its greatest. I'm a true testament of what this country can be at its greatest, at the lowest level to the highest level. And it's an honor to be an American. It's an honor to come from this country, and it's an honor to showcase in Europe what this country is capable of. And I'm blessed to be a part of that.
Yeah, what a perfect place to end. Please join me in thanking Ryan Speedo Green. Thank you. Okay, just a quick reminder that Dave Rue will be giving the keynote address at Baccalaureate, which will be held at 4:30 in the Watson Arena, and I hope you will join us for that very special event. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.